there, friends and sane persons. My name is Kyle, and it's Wednesday, which means it's time for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. As you may remember from last time, if you watched it, Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that we're going to be doing every Wednesday in the evening around 7 o'clock U.S. Eastern Time, where I'm going to take some board game related topic and just go over it with you in a short format, around 20-25 minutes ideally. I play a lot of games and I have a lot of thoughts and more than I can possibly get out in our Saturday morning show. So this is just a little time we can spend together and talk about some games. The game that I'm going to talk about today, which I'm sure you could figure out if you saw the title of the episode, is a game. It's a brand new game that's called Return to Dark Tower. Now, I don't know why there's not a the in there, but hey, it is what it is. Uh, a bit of background. What we have here is in the 1980s, I believe 1981, Milton Bradley put out a game called The Dark Tower. And that was a squawk box game where you had this box in the table that was kind of tower shaped vaguely, and you were trying to make a ring around it and then go up and attack it, and you'd gain soldiers, and then the tower did some math and made some beeps at you based upon what you were doing, which could cause you to gain things, lose things, etc. And it was kind of one of those early games of this ilk, and I never played it. It came out in 1981. I was I was alive for a very short portion of 1981, but definitely too young to play The Dark Tower. And then by the time I got older and got into games, it had long faded into memory. But what we have now is Restoration Games, who kind of takes older games and revamps them. They've come out with a new version called Return to Dark Tower. And what you're doing in this game is you're normally cooperating and you're trying to stop the spread of some kind of evil. And so that's what you're doing. Now, there is a way to play it competitively, and I have not yet tried that out. I've tried it exclusively cooperatively, but I've played it several times now, and so I have a lot of thoughts about the game. And what the game really is it's almost like a role-playing adventure, except without the role-playing, but you've got a character, you're taking that character around, you're doing various things, going on quests, exploring dungeons, fighting monsters, helping the poor, building an army, whatever you want to do, that's kind of what you can do. It feels very open. And although there is a main objective you're trying to achieve, the way that you get there is going to change from game to game. So that's kind of how how the game works. What we have here is I'll kind of show you some of the components, but then I'm going to cut to the screen and show you a few more. The first one I wanted to show you is this main piece here. This is the Dark Tower. Now, this is a large plastic tower, and it basically has a few rotating rings, some lights in here, a speaker system, and it has these doors here that you can slide out. And through the course of the game, you're going to be dropping these skulls in here. Well, it looks like we found one that's blocked off, but many of these are open. You're going to drop these little skulls in here, and at various times in the game, the tower is going to spin around, and it's going to spit those skulls out. And those skulls, they are not good things, and they're going to cause you to lose the game if you don't take care of them. Almost think of like pandemic style. They're going to come out, they're going to sit on your buildings. Let me show you here a few pictures. The first one I want to show you is just kind of, well, I'll show you this one first. This one I took just a few minutes ago. This is, of course, the tower itself. You can see it lights up really nicely. I have mine on a Lazy Susan. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it looks really nice when it's all lit up. Unfortunately, if you're playing with the lights on, which most people do, I'm sure, it's not going to look quite as nice. But if you want to look at the lights, well, then you won't be able to see the board. But hey, I guess there's a trade-off. But really, the kind of the main thrust of the game. Let me go to another picture here. You've got a board, and on this board there are these different spaces, and you're going to have a character, and you're going to be moving around each turn. You've got a number of different things that you can do. let me actually pull up the player aid, because the player aid in your character sheet is going to be really helpful. You'll see that on your turn, you've got one banner action. Now, your banner action is basically a bonus you get at the start of your turn. You could, it's sometimes to take a resource or move around for free. There's some more complicated heroes that do a little bit more, like move these tokens around the board, that kind of thing. You've got this bonus action that you can do. And then you've got movement, and you've got a heroic action, which is some sort of thing you're going to do to fight the evil. We'll talk about them in a moment. And then you've got what's called reinforcing, but basically it means using a building to get a bonus. All pretty simple there. I see my face is a little bit split with this picture in the background. That's fine. Anyway, so the different heroic actions you can do, you can remove skulls from buildings, and if the skulls fall out on the buildings, they don't do anything, but once a fourth skull would go out onto a building, it is destroyed. It removes the skulls from the game, it removes the building from the game, and if it's in your area, you get a corruption, and if you get more than 2 corruptions, you lose the game. So there's sort of an annoyance that you're kind of going about trying to fight. And then you can also battle, and battle we'll talk about in a moment. That uses an app. And then the other thing you can do is to quest, and there's going to be various quests that you're trying to accomplish during the course of the game. And that's really going to be how you win the game. Sometimes you'll get a bonus for doing them. There's a heroic quest every round. There's an evil quest that if you don't do it, you'll suffer some kind of a penalty. And then there's sort of the overall quest of the game. And by doing that, you'll get this nemesis creature to come out and fight you. And if you beat that nemesis creature, you win the game. So let's talk a little bit about the combat and the app that really runs this game, because that's one of the more interesting features about the game. You got an app. I have mine on my iPad, and what you're going to use it for is you're going to use it to set up the game. It controls the tower. The tower links via Bluetooth, and you'll use the app to select a scenario. There's 10 or so scenarios, and then you'll select a nemesis creature that you're going to be fighting. There's about 10 of those, and then there's several different levels of monsters and minions that you'll also select. And so you can kind of mix and match those. And the app is going to kind of run the game for you. You put all that stuff in, you put in how many players, you choose your difficulty level. There's 2 in the game, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then you hit go, and then the app's going to control the tower. And each round is called years. I think there's 6 years in the game, and in each year, other than the first one, there's an indefinite number of rounds. And you don't know how many it's going to be because it's indefinite, but eventually the app will tell you the year's over and you go into a new one. And that's sort of the cutoff for completing the various quests that are available. On your turn, you're going to go through that chart, do your banner action, your heroic action, your movement, and use a building if you'd like to. And then you're going to take one of these skulls, which we've talked about already, and you're just going to drop it right into the tower. And that's actually an interesting design feature. See, it just goes right in. And sometimes it'll pop right back out, and sometimes it'll sit in there. And then when the tower rotates at various times in the games, it might spit it back out in a different position. And that's an interesting way because that's the only way to get the app to move forward to the next turn. So it makes it nice because you really can't forget to drop the skull in. And then the app will pick things like events. So there might be, I don't know, some bad event that happens, some ally that you have does something good for you. It might give you a hint, a prediction. Something terrible is going to be happening in the northern part of the city. You don't know when, but you might not want to be there, or you might not want to end your turn there because something bad might happen at a future time. And you're just going to go back and forth on that. The one other thing the app does, though, is, well, it tells you when monsters come out. And then if you decide to go into combat, you're going to use the app to do that. And you're just going to touch the monster you're going to fight. And then there's a deck of sort of virtual cards. There's 10 or so virtual cards. And each monster has a number of cards you draw based on its level. There's levels 2, 3, 4, and then the big bads are going to be level 5. And you're going to draw some at random and resolve them. And the app will tell you, okay, to resolve this card, lose 25 soldiers. Soldiers are a resource in the game. They're not people, they're just a resource. or there's something else called insight, which you can get, and it'll say lose 25 soldiers. But what you have is something called advantages. And that's really what's unique about the game, and we'll talk about it more in a minute. But at the start of the game, based upon who you're fighting, where you're fighting, your characters or your abilities might give you advantages. Like I have here this card, it says, oh, that's not very good focus. It says +1 magic advantage. So if you have this brass talisman equipped, at the start of the fight, you'd say, well, I have 1 magic advantage. And if the creature you're fighting is a magic creature, and I don't know if I have one here that is, but then you're going to be able to use, yeah, I didn't bring a magic creature today. How sad. You're going to be able to use an advantage. So when it said 25, lose 25 soldiers, you tap this button and it would say, nope, lose 2 soldiers. And then if you used another advantage, you might tap it again and it would say gain 4 soldiers, right? It's going to adjust the outcome of the battle. They always start out bad, but you can make them neutral or even good if you have enough advantages. You can collect at most 10 that you can spend throughout the battle. And then you're going to go through a certain number of cards, and then you'll take the monster off the board. That's that. But when you get to the big bad at the end, it's a little bit different. The big bad at the end has lots of really nasty cards, and unlike the minor minions, you can stop at any time. So you resolve 1 card, and you use your advantages on it, and then it permanently alters that card to make it better for you. So the next time you fight, if you go back and fight that monster again, that card that made you lose the 25 soldiers, now it always says gain 4 soldiers. So you're gradually improving the big bad as you go along, and I find that really interesting. Anyway, you're going to do those things, and then you're really done. And it's not a very complicated game at all. So let's go through and talk about some things that I like in the game. So the first one I already mentioned is this advantage system. The advantage it's something that I just haven't seen before. It's not rolling a die. It's you're drawing a card, sort of. It's a virtual card, which, you don't have to shuffle. But you're able to sort of say, well, okay, I guess I can pay for this one. I'm going to spend some resources and spend my advantages, because you know how many cards you've got to last through. I really like that when you're fighting the big boss, you're going to maybe divide the boss up among 3 or 4 different fights, and each time gradually improve it. Very interesting. And then, you can sort of wear it down over the course of 5 or 6 turns to make it a little bit easier to beat. I really like the components. This tower, I already showed you, it's nice and sturdy. It definitely has some table presence. It lights up, it beeps, and it makes sounds. It looks really interesting. It's very inviting. I like, if you get the expansion, the base game comes with these monsters, and the monsters are these little tokens, right? And it'll just tell you the information you need about the monster. There are also cards that kind of go with the monster that give you a sense of what its characteristics are. Like this Titan is melee and humanoid, so you can use melee and humanoid advantages on it. But if you get one of the expansions, you get these nice miniatures for it. Actually, mine have this base on them, and that's because if you've got a lot of these out on the board, they kind of, look, this one you'll never confuse, but some of them are kind of the same size and they can get mixed up easily. So these nice little bases help differentiate which level of monster it is. Those are kind of fun. There's a nice expansion that comes with some extra characters that are a little bit more complicated. And it also comes with some extra bonus skulls. I don't know if you can see those. Yeah, there we go. That are different colors, and the different colors are going to mean different things. Like you might have to pay a resource or 2 if you enter a building that has one of those more advanced skulls on it. I think that's kind of fun. I like the adventure, right? There's this nice sense of adventure that you feel like you're going out on a quest and doing interesting things. I love how easy the game is. It's, not to play. The rules are very light. You could teach the game in just a few minutes. The app takes care of all of the administration for you. So really all you have to do is sit down and play, jump in, enjoy it, and it's great. I really like those things. I mentioned that I love the advantage system. I like that player aid. I showed it to you a while ago, but it goes very nicely through all of the different steps of your turn. You just have to follow that. It also there were some special abilities that were on there, the different kinds of advantages, and you can unlock those as the game goes by. It's very nice. It gives you a nice feeling of progression. It's very enjoyable and easy to use. But with anything that's good and exciting, there's going to be a few negatives. One of the things that's negative, and this is maybe just a personal thing, is this tower, which is really nice and exciting. You got to use batteries for it, and it will drain through those fairly quickly. I got two sort of sets of reusable batteries that I can rechargeable batteries that I can recharge, so it's not going to be a huge deal. But that's kind of an annoyance. I'm not really a fan of the sort of disposable batteries, just because you got to go find some, and if they're out of if they're out of power, you can't play the game. The game's also a little on the long side. Even as a solo game, it can take a while to get through. So you're looking at 45 minutes to an hour, which for a solo game is a little bit on the long side. And it's longer with more people, obviously, because you've got more turns going back and forth. I don't know that it's too long, but every time I've played it, I've sort of looked at the time after I'm done with it and said, oh, that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Another kind of negative about it is that the characters themselves are pretty generic. I showed you that one, and his name is something like Brutal Warlord, and they don't get any better than that. There's Brutal Warlord, there's Relic Finder or something, there's a Spy Master. And, okay, these are just kind of titles, but the characters don't have any personality to them. It's not like you're customizing the character and developing it to be something that you want. It's just going to be this sort of archetype that goes out, and it feels a little bit flat. Okay, what does the Brutal Warlord do? Well, he gathers soldiers so that he can attack. I wish there were a little bit more personality in that. And then those are all kind of minor advantages. The two that are a little bit bigger are the game itself. The gameplay difficulty is pretty easy. I've only ever lost it one time, and I have played rules incorrectly to my detriment and still had a fairly handy victory. Now, you don't ever really know how close you are to victory or defeat in the game. I mean, I guess you know how close you are to victory, but you don't know when the game's going to end. So there is that, but I haven't ever found it particularly difficult. And so just be aware of that. You might want to play on the higher difficulty setting just so that you can have a bit more of a challenge once you're familiar with the rules. And then the other one, and this is kind of a dumb thing, but the tower, as nice as it is, it's kind of like Tekenu, right? There was that obelisk and you couldn't see over it. Well, the tower is even worse. It's huge, it's tall, and especially if you're playing with a lower player count, you're going to need to know what's on the other side of the board. Something I didn't mention is that there's these little glyphs, these symbols that show up on the tower, and if you're in an area where they're facing, you have to pay a penalty if you want to do a certain action. And if it's on the other side of the table, well, you just won't be able to see that unless you either pick it up and turn it around or get up and go to the other side. Of course, I found a nice solution to that, and that was that I put mine on a Lazy Susan. And so you can see with my Lazy Susan here, I can rotate the tower, and that really solves my issue with with not being able to see it on the other side. But it's a big Lazy Susan, and you kind of got to go find one. Maybe you don't want to have one, but it's really nice for mine because I can easily turn it around slowly and see what's on the other side of the table. All right, it wouldn't hurt me to get up and walk either, but still, it's I don't know. It's just a little bit annoying. But those are really the only negatives about the game, and these are all issues that you can solve. And so, on the whole, I really like it. I think if you were to ask me what my final rating would be, it depends on the day and it depends on how many times I've played it. I probably would give it some days an 8 and some days a 9 out of 10. Both very good ratings. It's a game that I really enjoy playing. Now, it has not worked with everyone I've played it with. Some people have thought, that's kind of not really for me. It might be the app, and that's not that I'm not saying that people are necessarily against apps. I know some people are. But if one person's kind of managing the app and the other person is kind of listening to what happens, that might cut down on the fun a little bit. And the other option, of course, is to pass your iPad around the table the whole game. And I don't know. I don't know which is better there. So some people have liked it a little bit less, but for me, I think it's great. I think it's great as a solo game. I think it's great as a game with other people. I have not yet played it competitively. I'd like to try that sometime, but based on the rules, I think that's probably not how it's going to shine. But definitely for me, 8 or 9 out of 10, depending on the day. Oh, something I didn't mention earlier is just the variety of different quests. I mentioned that there's about 10 different ones, but you're doing something different each time. I find that to be really fascinating. There was one, my favorite one I played so far, you had to like move these tokens around to create a ring of forest spaces around the tower. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then the bad guys would come in and burn down the trees and mess it up. So it was just a different kind of puzzle, not necessarily, collect 4 cards of each color and clear all the disease cubes or that sort of more familiar formula. Anyway, it is a fantastic game. It's a game that I am really glad that I have. It makes me almost want to go back and hunt down an old Dark Tower, but I watched I watched a couple of videos of people playing the old one, and I think this is definitely going to be better in the long run. So it's also, I think it's more available than some other games that I might talk about. I know that it is definitely coming into wide distribution. So it's one you should certainly check out. It's a lot of fun. It'll work with adventurers of any ages. Anyway, that's that for me today. I'm glad you came to watch. I had a good time talking about the Dark Tower or Return to Dark Tower, excuse me. And I'll be back hopefully next week with another game related topic. Not sure what it is yet, but I guess I've got a week to figure it out. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Have a great night.